Hi there, my name is Stephanie Lynn, and I wanted to just get online and briefly talk about memory work. Okay, so I was back in the day, undergrad and grad school performance studies. So I had the opportunity for my degrees to do a 50-minute one woman show and also later on an hour to an hour and 10-minute one woman show, which means it's just you on stage doing your memory work, right? In hopefully a dramatic and exciting way. So I wanted to explain the technique that I use to be able to do long memory and also how you can implement that at home with your students. So, first of all, let's talk about why we want basically long passage memory work versus short chunk memory works, which is what honestly I grew up in up until this point, and what you probably have too, whether that's memorizing little snippets of poetry or a Bible verse here or there. So what ends up happening is we memorize this little bit and we don't move on to the second verse until it's perfect. So we have the first verse. Okay, now that we have the first verse, let's move on to the second. Now that we have the second, let's move on to the third. And what that is actually doing is creating two little problems. So problem number one is the fact that it is creating breaks in our memory. So we have a small rope that we're tying onto another small rope that we're tying onto another small rope that we're tying onto another small rope. And then we're hoping by the time we're done tying on little small ropes that our rope will be really strong. But in reality, it can actually break very easily at any of those tied on parts, right? So that's problem number one. Problem number two is that you set yourself up to believe that your memory can only work if it works perfectly. So if you don't get a word just right, you're used to like going back to the closest starting point and working on your memory. And then before you can move on, it kind of has to be perfect. And this creates a kind of, you're training your brain to be able to not be able to move forward unless your memory is flawless. And that is not what we want actually in life in general, but also especially if you're wanting to get your student to get up and recite these passages, whether it's a chunk of Bible, a chunk of a Bible passage or a Shakespeare sonnet down the road, whatever. What you want to give your student is the ability to be able to keep going with their memory until their memory actually catches back up, to be able to fill in the blank in their brain, to be able to just having the show go on until those exact works, like the exact words, get back up in their mind. So the long passage memory that we're going to talk about allows you to do that. It's training your brain, number one, to not have these memory breaks, but it's also training your brain to be able to fill in the blank in a way that most people probably wouldn't know you're actually like flubbing until your memory picks back up. So it's giving you the skill to keep the show going, right? So let me explain to you what kind of like I would do with long passages if it were just me or if it was an older student. So I would say late junior high, high school. This technique would work really well. And then I'm going to tell you how I modify it for my kids right now, who the oldest is in third grade. So a passage that we were working on and we just got finished is John 1, 1 through 10. So if this were just me, if it was just me doing my own personal Bible memory, I would pick this up and I would read it 10 times out loud, not stopping. I wouldn't read for a lot of emphasis, but I wouldn't read like a robot either. I would just read regularly and I would read it out loud. Why? Because it's engaging my eyes, it's engaging my mouth, and it's engaging my ears. And those three things together can really help aid in the memory process. So you want to engage as much as your body as possible. If I were doing this with a really long passage like I did back when I was a student, I would actually kind of do this while I was walking around the hall or something like that, because my body will actually, moving your body while you're doing all of this can actually help your memory as well. But anywho, so I would read this 10 times out loud. Then I would put it down. And here's the trick. You have to say your passage. You're not going to say it perfectly. You cannot say it perfectly, especially if this is the first set of 10 that you're doing. You will not. But what it is doing, it is forcing your brain to kind of highlight the areas that your memory is weak, that your memory needs help. We all know that we do learn through mistakes, we do learn through not knowing, and that is exactly what your brain is trying to do. It's trying to highlight the areas that you're going to need to plug in to get this right. So it creates this worksheet kind of idea. Number one, another thing that is happening is that as you are going through it, your brain is being forced to come up with synonyms, other phrases that get the idea across without being perfect, which is exactly what you would need if you forget a line, forget a stanza, something in performance. Your brain just needs to fill it in until you can get back on track. And so you're already training your brain to do that. So then after I've done it 10 times and I have forced myself to say it, imperfect as it is, I pick it back up and I'm going to read it out loud 5 more times. Put it down, do it again. And then I'm going to leave it until the next time I need to pick it up. So that might be the next day. I might decide, you know what, I want to try another little memory time right before bed, which is actually really nice, right before bed, because that way your brain can ruminate it all, all those juices can want to memorize it during the night. So it's really good that way, but not everyone has a chance to do that. But you just put it down, leave it until the next day. Pick it up 5 times, put it down, say it. Next time, pick it up 5 times, put it down, say it. Now, honestly, 5 times for 10 verses isn't going to take that long, and you will find that your memory is actually surprisingly quick. Because the rhythm of the words when you're doing the whole passage is easy for it to recognize, but also just the repetition. Your brain each time is fine-tuning those spaces and is filling in those blanks better and better, and you'll be amazed at how quick you can pick up a big passage. Same thing with a sonnet, anything like that. Now, how do I modify this for my younger students? Because the first time, like, boys and girls, here's our new Bible passage, and let's read it 10 times out loud. That doesn't really go over very well. I wouldn't imagine. I've actually never tried it because I pretty much know it would not go over very well. So what do? So the first day I'm introducing a new passage, I read it all the way through. And then I go back and I go through each verse and just explain what the verse means. And my kids are younger, so some of it needs some explanation, so that way they actually understand what they're memorizing. That's very important. And then I'll go through, I'm like, okay, we're going to read it one more time. And so like for the first week, I will read it through myself 2 times out loud, just, for 5 days, whatever. 2 times out loud, that's it. Then the next day, I'm going to say, all right, now I'm going to read our Bible passage. I want you to join me. We listened to it several times. Let's do it together. And they will falter. They will. They will totally falter. But you've got to trust the process. Their brain is making those blanks. Their brain is going to fill it in. And if you do this every single day, or at least 5 days a week, you will, within a month, it should probably be down. 6 weeks, by the end of the term, which for us is 12 weeks, they've had it down for at least 3 or 4 weeks flawlessly. I mean, even my kindergartner, which isn't technically in our formal schooling right now with this, its memory is not required for him, but he will have it down and he can fill in the blanks. He can, whatever, and stand up and say it with his sister. And so then what I do is I give, with Charlotte Mason, they call it exams. We call it showcase at our house. It sounds a little friendlier. And I will do a recording. My daughter will say the passage. I will record it. And it's really neat because now we have a collection of videos of passages. 1 Corinthians 13, John. We're going to be working on Psalm 1. She will have a collection of all these large passages, which is actually great because then I can go in and save them in a little playlist, and she can review them. She can review herself saying them, and all of that goes back into the memory and being able to just kind of cement it even further. So that is what I consider like the long memory technique, and how it's really good for junior high and up, and how I modify it for the younger kids. So I hope that's helpful, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to answer them. Bye.